Hello and welcome to part one of our Buyer's Guide to e-mountain bikes. In this video, we'll be showing you some of the key features of an e-bike and what to look out for before parting with your hard-earned cash. Now there are scores of brands, hundreds of models, and about half a dozen different motors on the market, so at first sight it can be truly bewildering. By the end of this video though, you should be armed with the knowledge to make the right purchasing decision. Where better place to start than the motor? This Scott Genius E-Ride 900 tuned comes with the 4th generation Bosch Performance Line CX motor mid-mounted in the frame. Now when we talk about motors, you'll start to hear a lot about power in watts and torque in Newton meters. Power is something that you'll be very familiar with if you've ever bought a washing machine or a vacuum cleaner. The higher the watts, generally the more powerful the appliance and the harder it can work. If you look at the specifications for most e-bikes on the market, you'll see that they all have 250 watt motors. So they all must be equally powerful, right? Well, it's not quite as simple as that. 250 watts refers to the continuous rated power over 30 minutes, which is restricted by EU law. But manufacturers wiggle around this by delivering significantly higher peak power for shorter bursts. For example, this Bosch motor produces an impressive 600 watts. And to put that into some kind of perspective, Bradley Wiggins was estimated to produce an average of 440 watts during his 2015 hour record. So you've got a motor that's more powerful than an Olympic champion. And to that, you've got to add whatever your legs bring to the table, which for an average mountain biker could be around 200 watts on a climb. The other important number to consider is torque. Now torque is a rotational force and it's something you should know all about if you've ever had to loosen the lid on a jam jar. The higher the torque, the more force you're using to unscrew that lid. Now on an e-bike, the motor needs lots of torque to get that rear wheel turning and the bike moving. You tend to really feel this when you're accelerating from low speeds or climbing steep hills. And luckily for us, electric motors tend to produce lots of torque at low RPMs. So for mountain biking, when we're always braking and accelerating rather than riding at a steady speed for long periods of time, and we have to tackle challenging climbs, it's really important. Now the Bosch unit has 85 Newton meters of torque, and that's among the most powerful on the market. Of course, to supply power to the motor, you need a battery. And like most modern e-bikes, the Scott Genius E-Ride conceals its battery inside the down tube. This gives the bike nice clean lines and still leaves room inside the front triangle for tools and a water bottle. But you can still remove the cover to take the battery out for charging. Now batteries come in all different shapes and sizes, but the number you really need to look at is the capacity in watt hours. As standard, the Scott comes with a 625 watt hour battery, which is pretty big, which means that if the motor were to produce 625 watts, you'll be able to ride for an hour before the battery went flat. But of course we know that this produces a maximum of 600 watts and only in short bursts. So if the motor were to produce 300 watts consistently, you'll be able to ride for 2 hours. Calculating how far you can go on a single charge is not that simple, however. You have to take into account the weight of the rider, the terrain, the wind speed, tyre pressures, the list goes on and on. It's safe to say that the bigger the battery, the further the range. By fitting a special bracket in here, you can piggyback an extra 500 watt hour battery into the Genius E-Ride. Now to get the battery out on most e-bikes, you'll need a key, and it's really important not to lose this. The final piece of the e-bike puzzle is the control unit. This lets you toggle between power modes, see how much battery you've got left, and view lots of geeky data about cadence, distance, elevation gained, and much, much more. On the Genius E-Ride, you get the Bosch Kiox unit, which has a separate control unit and centrally mounted display. By tapping the plus and minus symbols on the remote, you can toggle between Eco, Tour, EMTB, and Turbo modes. Our favourite is the EMTB mode, as this intelligently adapts the power of the motor, giving you more when you need it most and less when you want to conserve battery. It's a great way to boost your fun while simultaneously maximising your range. There's also a walk mode that powers the bike when you need to get off and push up a steep climb. On the Kiox unit, you get all the functionality of a bike computer with added connectivity through your phone. So by activating Bluetooth, you can upload your ride to the web, connect to a heart rate monitor, and it can tell you when your bike is next due a service. You can even top up your phone battery by connecting it to the USB port. Other things specific to an e-bike are the speed sensor, which is hidden here behind the rear dropout. This measures the wheel speed of the bike and makes sure that the motor cuts out above 25 kilometers an hour, which is about 16 miles an hour. You also get a charger, which is suitable for a standard 3-pin socket. The Scott Genius E-Ride is what we'd call a trail e-bike with a full fat motor, and it's the most popular category on the market. Now it comes with 29-inch wheels, but you can also get e-bikes with smaller 27.5-inch wheels. Generally speaking, these tend to be better for shorter riders because they can be packaged into smaller frames and they tend to be more agile. E-mountain bikes have also started to copy motocross bikes by adopting mixed wheel sizes. Sometimes known as a mullet bike, mixed wheel size e-bikes come with a 29-inch front wheel for extra stability and because they roll over bumps better, and this is paired with a 27.5-inch back wheel. Now this brings some extra agility, it helps the bike turn more easily, and when paired with a larger volume rear tyre, increases traction on steep loose climbs. As a top of the range e-bike, the Genius gets a carbon frame. Now this saves a bit of weight, but when the average e-bike weighs over 20 kilos, losing a few hundred grams is just a drop in the ocean. So while it's nice, it's definitely not essential. If the Scott is an example of the most popular type of e-mountain bike, it's important to note that it's not the only style you can buy. If you want something really light that handles as dynamically as a non-e-bike, you might want to check out the emerging trend for diet e-bikes. Now these are around 17 to 18 kilos with much smaller, lighter and less powerful motors. So you have to do more of the work yourself, but it's a much more familiar experience if you're coming straight from a non-e-bike. At the other end of the scale are the downhill Shuttle e-bikes. These tend to have full power motors, dual crown forks, heavy duty tyres, big brakes, coil shocks and low slack geometry. And they're great for sessioning bike parks and downhill tracks without an uplift. And finally there are e-hardtails. Without any rear suspension, these tend to be cheaper and simpler, but they can also be punishing on rough terrain and much more likely to puncture, as it can be really hard to hop them over rocks and obstacles. A top-of-the-range e-bike like this Scott Genius E-Ride costs £6,800, while the cheapest decent full suspension e-bikes start at around £2,500. Now that's a lot of dosh, but it might be possible to save money and spread the payments by buying your e-bike through the government's Cycle to Work scheme. This is now open to e-bikes and there's no price limit, so it could be the perfect way to get into e-mountain biking. So that's covered the basics of an e-mountain bike. Hopefully you're feeling a lot wiser and more confident about choosing the right one. In the next video, we're going to cover setting up and caring for your e-bike. So thanks for watching and catch you in part 2.